Hey listeners, last year was our 15th year of the best in food storytelling. As we head into 2025, we're kicking off a contest in collaboration with the podcast series Feast and Harmony and Sixth Man, where you have the opportunity to win a 4-night cruise for 2 on Chefs Making Waves, a food, wine, and spirits festival at sea. When you donate to HRN, you'll be entered for the chance to win a porthole cabin for 2 on Chefs Making Waves, sailing May 5th through 9th, 2025, from Miami to Cozumel, Mexico on Norwegian Gem. You'll also support another year of great food storytelling with a portion of your donation going toward disaster relief for the food and beverage communities within Western North Carolina and Southern California. This cruise is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for culinary adventurers, featuring top celebrity chefs including Jonathan Waxman, Antonio Lafaso, Robert Irvine, and many, many more. There's a myriad of experiences such as restaurant takeovers, live food and mixology demos, themed parties, and more. To enter your chance to win, please visit heritageradionetwork.org/cruise. Terms and conditions apply. You must be 21 or over to enter. That's heritageradionetwork.org/cruise.
Hey everyone, Greg Benson here, and if you're a regular listener of The Speakeasy, you probably know by now that I've been working to bring 100% pure, actually good-tasting agave nectar to the United States for a minute. But I wanted to give you a bit of an update. I actually got to travel to the farm where these amazing plants have been growing for decades, and it was just a genuinely moving experience. I got to see these agave in their natural habitat and see what it means to Rogelio, the farmer, to be able to care for the descendants of the same agave that his grandfather was growing almost a full century ago. That's why I'm proud to announce Quixote Imports, a new venture that's dedicated to preserving these agave and, yes, still bringing in the same fantastic, earthy, lightly fruity agave nectar that's going to make you wonder why you've been wasting your time with the crap at the grocery store. Plus, our fans here at the Speakeasy can get free shipping at checkout with promo code SPEAKEASY, so don't wait. Head on over to quixoteimports.com and see what agave nectar is actually supposed to taste like, and use promo code SPEAKEASY for free shipping. Salud.
This episode is brought to you by Plugra European-style butter, crafted for those who demand precision and exceptional results in the kitchen. With 82% butter fat and a slow churn process, Plugra gives you flakier crusts, fluffier cakes, and rich, melt-in-your-mouth pastries. Because great baking starts with great butter. Unlike standard American butters, which have only 80% butter fat, Plugra ensures the ideal moisture and fat balance so your recipes turn out just right every time. That's why professional chefs trust Plugra and home bakers love it. Plugra's slow churn process creates a smooth, creamy butter that gives dough a soft, pliable texture, making rolling, folding, and laminating effortless. Whether you're perfecting a buttery pie crust or layering a delicate croissant, Plugra helps you bake with confidence. Experience the difference for yourself. Find Plugra in stores near you or visit plugra.com. That's Plugra.com.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
So you don't shun the devil with your rock and roll load. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil finds his groove in them rhythm and blues that send. It's gonna get you sun in the air.
Welcome back to the Speakeasy. I'm Sother Teague.
And I'm Greg Benson, and I just got back from the Peach State. First time...
You get your peaches down in Georgia?
Yeah, well, second time in Georgia, but my first and only experience in the state of Georgia before this was rescuing a dog off the side of the interstate. So this time I got to actually, hang out, go to an aquarium and try some of their fun local bars. And I had an experience that kind of made me think of something that I blabbed about at the top of the show a few months back. So you remember when I went to that bar in the middle, speaking of things that are off the side of the interstate, the bar in the middle of ass nowhere, Maryland, that tried to kick me out because I was wearing a tank top.
I do.
I was exercising my Second Amendment right to bear arms.
Yes.
So,
your own personal gun show.
Exactly. I know. Well, they didn't have their tickets, and that's why they had to kick me out. But I don't know. I kind of came out pretty hot in terms of being like, I don't know, I kind of think dress codes are bullshit and they're unnecessarily gatekeepery, and like, who do you think you are telling me what I can and can't wear coming into this? And again, I also want to reiterate that at this particular restaurant, there was a woman a few tables over who was literally not wearing pants. So don't kid yourself that this was some sort of black tie event that I was badly dressed for. But I did when I was in Georgia. You know, I was in Atlanta for one day only, and it was a Monday. And as we all know, lots of places are closed on Mondays, as is their right. But I found this one spot called the Red Phone Booth, and I was like, "Oh, this looks cool." It's like a little, you know, kind of a PDT sort of thing. You go into the booth, you get let in. It's a little kind of like Southern speakeasy. I'm like, "This looks fun." I get there, and they ask me if I have the code, and I say no, and they say, "Oh, because this is a speakeasy." They're very committed to the bit. They're like, "You got to have a code or be a member to get in." And I was like, "All right." So I went on about a 45-minute quest around the neighborhood trying to find this code. Yeah, exactly. Because they said some of the hotels give it out, but none of the hotels were. And I finally went to the restaurant that was above this, was very, you know, slathered on a nice thick Nutella layer of the old Benson charm, and asked the bartender if they had the code. And the guy was like, "Yeah, sure." And he just goes into the cash register and kind of gets something, gets the code out from underneath of it. Nice guy, really lovely guy. And I went in, and there was a bit of a moment
Dying to
where
know the code. Who would you
What's
slip
up?
past that? Dying to know the code.
Well, I can't give it to you, Sother. It's, you know, I had to look around for 45 minutes for it. If I had to earn it, I can't just say it out here on the
I
air.
feel certain they must change it.
They also do change it, yes, because I looked on Reddit to see if I could find it, and apparently it rotates on a monthly basis. So, and I get in there, and there was some doubt about whether or not I was going to be able to go in jeans. Now, granted, you know, I always look professional and put together, so these were nice jeans, so they let me in. But you know, it's one of these. It was like
They
a
didn't
milk
give
and
you that
honey sort of
information before
experience.
they sent you out on this quest for the code. Now that would have been rude.
It would have been funny. I would have been pissed off, but it would have been kind of funny, and I would have had to admit that. But I did get in. Lovely experience. Staff was great. Drinks were great. Vibe was very like, it did kind of feel like you're in this sort of like members club sort of thing. And it made me kind of rethink my anti-dress code stance from a few months ago. Because like, granted, if you're a place that is like, again, like just slinging chicken fingers off the side of the highway, what are you doing having a dress code? But like, if you do have a dress code, your game better be fucking tight. And theirs was. Great people, great vibe, great environment. Other people there were really nice. So yeah, highly recommend trying to, you know, put on your
crack the
safe
code.
cracker hat and trying to get the code if you ever find yourself in Atlanta, Georgia. Lovely spot.
Say the name again.
Red Phone Booth.
Red Phone Booth. All right.
Yeah, we should get there. We should get
Pulling directly from the playlist of PDT, I guess.
I mean, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Did you pass through a hot dog stand on the way?
We did not. That was
Boil peanuts maybe instead in Georgia.
a peach grove. It's at the phone booth at the end of a peach grove. It was very on theme.
We'll talk about it off air, but I'm just as interested. You went to the aquarium in Atlanta. That's a big deal. That's one of the biggest ones.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, the aquarium, the Georgia aquarium, dude, go if you ever get the chance. Only place in the world where you can see whale sharks, which are the biggest fish that has ever existed. They're about the size of 2 school buses, and they're just, it's so wild to just see a living organism that big. Like, you think you're prepared for it, and it just is mind-blowing how enormous and peaceful these creatures are.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of makes you realize, wow, the ocean is a wild place, and maybe we should take better care of it. Maybe we shouldn't dump Texas-sized islands of garbage into it. Perhaps we could consider being nicer to this planet we live on, where amazing things like whale sharks and manta rays and belugas and small clawed otters and penguins are. I don't know, just a thought. But speaking of sustainability, we have someone here who is very passionate about that. In fact, when we were emailing earlier, I really enjoyed the line, "You can't deny climate change if you live in New Orleans." So live from the Crescent City, we have Christa Cotton, who is the brains behind El Guapo Bitters. Christa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excited to have you. So yeah, you are a Georgian native and distilling is in your blood. So I want to talk about that a little bit. But you are currently a New Orleanian. So what is it like being in this line of work, but also living in such a famous cocktail city?
Honestly, I can't imagine living anywhere else. I feel like the culture here in every aspect is really strong, but cocktail culture specifically, there's just so many amazing places and great drinks that have their origins here. And it's just a really special place to be and create if you're in the spirits industry.
I mean, I always say about New Orleans, like my first time there, and the impression that I still kind of get from it every time I'm there is I love this sense of just kind of walking around at night and you just sort of think to yourself, why is no one stopping this? Like, it feels like the sort of thing that like some authority figure would come and be like, all right, everybody, fun's fun, but that's enough. Go home. But it doesn't. It has such a wonderful and vibrant culture. So I don't know what you're hearing in my voice is me being a little jealous that you get to be around that all the time.
It's
But I
a
imagine
very
it's like,
happy
I don't know,
place.
does it get old ever?
No.
Or no, it doesn't.
No,
Okay.
immediate
Damn
answer,
it.
no.
I think it's like Mardi Gras is like the renaissance of it all. So every year you go through that process and then you're just excited to be here again. But yes, if you're into food and music and cocktails and architecture and the great outdoors, there's no place like it. And costuming specifically, it's like incredible here. No place like it.
It is a wonderful place. And you are actually, speaking of places that we have in common, you are from Georgia originally, where you grew up in a distilling family. So talk to us a little bit about your origin story there.
Yeah.
I did. So I grew up in South Georgia in a little town called Leesburg outside of Albany. So, really tiny, like population 2,600. And my family started a commercial real estate company when I was 5 years old. So I sort of grew up traveling on the eastern half of the US looking at real estate properties, and my family was specifically trying to acquire properties that were grocery anchored. So when I was really little, this was small. It grew over my childhood, and by the time I was in high school, it was 7.5 million square feet of real estate. So, going to college, I went to Auburn University in Alabama because it was 45 minutes from our family office in Columbus, Georgia, which is where the real estate company was headquartered. And I had spent a ton of time in New Orleans, especially in the summers while my parents were working on different real estate deals. We had acquired a lot of stuff around Louisiana and all across the Gulf South while I was growing up. And
The
Katrina,
Gulf of America. I want to
the
just
Gulf
throw
of
that in.
America.
Hey, whoa,
Exactly.
whoa.
Sorry, I don't mean to derail the conversation.
Yeah,
Yes.
don't dead name the Gulf of Mexico, Sother.
Ay.
I know. I was in Mexico City recently, and I checked on my phone to see if that was real, but that's a real thing. So my parents had acquired all these properties, all and it's in 10 states, but there's a lot of stuff in the Gulf South. So I started college, and 2 weeks later, Hurricane Katrina hit, and so I spent my first 2 years in college, a significant amount of time here in New Orleans, helping my family renovate a lot of properties that had been without power for weeks and months on end. It was a really disgusting job, but it made me very passionate about New Orleans and wanting to make a difference here. So all of our family properties are grocery anchored. So we don't own the grocery stores, but we do own the properties. So think, freezers and refrigerators and no power and how bad that is. And a lot of the insurance companies would not pay the insurance because they would say it was rain damage or wind damage or flood damage. It certainly was not hurricane damage. So that was very stressful for my family. And we honestly almost went bankrupt. So right as New Orleans was going back on its feet, the credit crunch hit in 2007, 2008. And my dad decided that as a family, we needed to diversify. And so he saw an article in the New York Times about America's first craft distiller. His name is Seth Fox, and he lives in Atchison, Kansas. He owns Most Wanted Vodka. And my dad said, I'm going to start a liquor distillery. And everyone said, this is a midlife crisis.
Yeah, it is.
So he got in his
He was
car.
like, yes, and?
Right. So I'm 20 at the time. He gets in his car and drives to Kansas and finds this guy, and he hires him as a consultant. And I spent my last 2 years at Auburn helping my family open Georgia's first legal distillery since Prohibition. So we do have the first license, and it was a dream job for a 21-year-old, and I absolutely loved it. Seth was very helpful, and even today in my business, Seth is responsible for most of my equipment and setting up my bottling line and helping me at El Guapo grow. But that's really a relationship that started when I was 20 years old. So known him for a long time, but the family business started with vodka and gin. We started working on this in 2007. We started production in 2009. It's still a family business. It's called 13th Colony, but all of the products are branded Southern. So if you see Southern Rye or Southern Whiskey, now 70% of what is sold is actually the dark spirits, but we did start a pretty aggressive barrel program, but to begin with, it was just vodka, gin, things that are easier, faster, less expensive to make.
Vodka pays the bills.
Exactly. So it's pretty successful. My older brother runs it today, and it's in Americus, Georgia, which is about 45 minutes from my hometown of Leesburg and about 6 miles from Plains, where Jimmy Carter is from. But that's really how I got started. And I learned enough about licensure and permitting to understand that if I did a brand that was alcohol free, I would be able to get around a lot of these laws that make it really difficult for your brand to grow from state to state. So that's really kind of where the idea got started. But in this process of working in the real estate company and then for the family distillery, I figured out that I love entrepreneurship and I hate family business. It was very difficult for me. I have a lot of siblings. I have
Hope your dad's not tuning in.
No, but I mean, he knows it. I tell him, but
Yeah. I was going to say, I feel like if Dad was tuning in, he'd be just nodding along, being like, yep, that, right?
Her.
It was mutual.
Yeah. But, I wanted Thanksgiving to be Thanksgiving and not a board meeting. And it's hard. And I have a lot of siblings and very opinionated parents. And, it was a lot for me. And so I left, I moved to New Orleans, I worked in advertising, and I really loved that job. And I ended up being on the state tourism account. So we were filming all of the tourism campaigns for Louisiana. And I just met so many amazing people and was able to travel the state. And it was a great job for me. And then that sort of led to the lieutenant governor underwriting season 10 of Top Chef, and then working on that show with Magical Elves really started a lot of bigger relationships for me with different chefs around the country, people that were established and up and coming people. And after that, I knew that I wanted to bridge my advertising experience with all of my product experience from the distillery. And so there was a bartender that had started trying to do this here in New Orleans. He was looking to not do it anymore. So I started my own company. I acquired his old equipment and started really from there. So that was in 2017. So I started really with crawfish boil pots and Bunsen burners in 2017. And here we are 7.5 years later. And now we have 3,000 accounts in 50 states and 8 countries.
Wow. And international. That's crazy. And that's pretty rapid growth, especially, for, I think a bitters company. I deal a lot with bitters, and I know the struggles that these makers go through. Dale DeGroff, I think, said it best when he said about his own bitters. He's like, it's a very difficult thing to sell alcohol by the drop, right?
Exactly.
And so you've burst in on the scene, and El Guapo is NA all across the board, right? You don't have any alcoholic products.
Correct. So the bitters, it really started with crawfish bowl pots, and then it was pretty clear to me that I needed to figure out a system that used time, pressure, and heat to extract the best flavor in non-alcoholic, because we weren't using grain alcohol. So it started with that, and then we had a couple different bar clients that would specifically ask for different recipes on the syrup side. And me and my grandparents were farmers. My uncle is a farmer. I grew up in a farming community in South Georgia. So we started with experimenting with like making nut milks and creating orgeats. So for a long time, my uncle was our pecan farmer. And, it started with just things like that, where I knew I could make a really great
You're like trying to get out of the family business, but you keep getting drawn back.
Right. So, we use them as different farmers for different things that we need. But it started with the bitters, and then we sort of were dabbling in syrups, and those got to be really popular. And a lot of people figured out like the consistency was there, and it was less expensive and easier for them to buy from us than for them to have their own internal bar teams making these products day in and day out. So we expanded on the syrups line. And then later on, I was trying to figure out how to expand different groups of customers that we could sell to. And bitters and syrups are great, but they're wonderful for B2B, and they're great for home bartenders that are really into making exquisite and complicated cocktails, but they're not great for people that just want something fast. So we started with this mixers line, and that was just before COVID. And we pitched them to Costco, and they picked it up, but then COVID hit, and I actually lost my first woman-owned business supplier diversity deal with Costco for this mixers line for toilet paper. I don't know if y'all remember the great toilet paper shortage of 2020.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
What a time. What a time that was.
Yeah.
I'm the one thing that seems to be a through line for your life story is that we were on the cusp of doing this great thing, and then this national
Yeah.
tragedy happened, and we had to kind of pull back. So I guess just give yourself a pat on the back for still being here and
Yeah.
still making these products.
Thank you.
Like, how do you do you get salty about it ever, or is it just kind of like, well, that's we just got to roll with this now?
There's definitely hard moments for sure. And it seemed, I mean, you're right. Every time I like, if it's going too good, I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? But every couple years, it's something. The most recent one was Hurricane Ida in New Orleans. August will be 3 years since that happened, but it blew a third of the roof off of our production facility, which was super fun. The power lines for the entire city fell in the Mississippi River, so people didn't have power for 3 weeks. It was great time down here. But it just it's life experience, and it also just prepares you for the next thing. And I am a wildly optimistic person. I think when you've gone through a lot of adversity in your life, it just, it makes you able to rebound faster. And a lot of New Orleans people don't like the term resilience because it seems to always define us. But I do think it's the human spirit, and you have to be able to get up and keep going and still be marching towards your goals. And I'm a pretty happy person, but it's not always easy. And I think that my dad says entrepreneurship is a disease. I say it's a personality type, but you definitely have to be willing and able to get up and still do it, even when it's hard, because there's a lot more hard days than easy ones when this is your line of work.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's true of a lot of what we do in our field. And we all and then we have to add in the little bit on top, which is we got to do it with a smile, right? Because we're in hospitality. Going back a little bit to something you mentioned, I want to talk or at least ask about. You said 3 words: time, pressure, heat. Talk to me about how you're using those 3 approaches, and you're making an NA product. Because that's pretty fascinating to me. Like, how are you getting so much flavor out of a non-alcoholic when all my brain wants to tell me about my career in the world of bitters is that alcohol is the solvent.
Yes, of course. And a lot of people still, that's the traditional method, and a lot of people do that's how they think about it. For us, I was started in crawfish boil pots, and heat conductivity on a Bunsen burner is all over the place, and it's like really hard to control the metrics. But I was decent at science in high school, and I understood quality ingredients. I knew sourcing is like probably my superpower, just because I love ingredients and I grew up on a farm, and I just, with all the stuff that I did in advertising and working with all of these chefs, I just really have always had a healthy respect for agriculture and agricultural practices. So I knew if I could find good ingredients and then find a better system or like process for making these that was more consistent than a crawfish boil pot and a Bunsen burner, that the end product would be better. So I started with that. And then I really was doing a lot of tours of different businesses and kind of looking at equipment that different people were using, from distilleries and breweries to food processing plants and just all sorts of things. Whenever I would travel, I would like look and see what was in the area. And like, everybody else wants to go to an art museum, and I'm like, nah, we got to go to the, whatever factory. And people are like, okay, girl, whatever. So I would like go off on my own a lot and like look at this stuff. And ultimately I figured out that if I could build a brewing process, and that like it's also circulation, so like things are constantly moving, but it is a more controlled heat source, and it really looks like a brewery, and it is a brewing process, but it's the time that things are cooking, the brewing, the constant motion of creating this, and then having very clear controls on the heat. So like what temperature things are cooking at, and then doing a really good job in the filtration makes the clarity of the products better, but it doesn't strip the flavor out of it when we're going towards bottling, was really, what I was focused on. So it took me about 2 years to get that to a process that we were happy with. And our batch sizes in the beginning were 10 gallons on bitters and 20 gallons on syrups, because those were the best sizes in crawfish boil pots with the Bunsen burners that I could figure out how to like do this and make it work. But at this point, the bitters are 50 to 75 gallons, and the syrups and mixers go up to 300 gallons per batch. So that is just like getting smarter on equipment, also having Seth, the consultant that my dad hired way back in the day. He's been really helpful and is an engineer and has a distillery, and we can bounce ideas off of each other, and he's been able to kind of help me cobble together my dream and what I was envisioning. But it's been a 7.5-year journey of trying to get the equipment and everything dialed in to where it's pretty great, but it's taken a long time to get here.
Yeah, and the products are great. We've had them intermittently at Amore Margot, both on the shelves, and I think even made some into the menu items. And they're awesome. And you just mentioned you've got your bitters and your syrups, and you're expanding the line into mixers as well as RTDs, right?
Correct. So people forever have asked us about doing canned drinks, and I've always thought, like, it's been so hard for me to just figure out how to bottle stuff.
Mhm.
Why am I going to then go and can something? But when I was pregnant, I would do a lot of bitters and soda, just because, you want something that's delicious, but you don't want a Shirley Temple and something that's just like crazy amounts of juice and sugar and whatever. So kind of going from that, a lot of the feedback we've gotten from people over the years was that just a really great bitters and soda with no additives and no flavoring extracts or anything like that is something that people were really into. So we had a large corporate brand come to us and say, we're interested in this. Would you do a pilot and see if this is something that we could potentially purchase and use nationally? And so we said, yeah. And it really started from that. So we did a test batch, and I had no intention of putting this on shelves or in distribution. We made 4 pallets, and like a week later, we had more orders than what we could fill. So,
Wow.
yeah.
And the
So
RTD
it kind of
market is
started.
continuing to explode, right?
Right. And so now we've been approached by other companies that are interested, and they're like, this is amazing, but we do CBD, we do THC. Would you do, like, can we use this to create, something that we do? Can we do a collaboration? So it's spawned other opportunities, but we are about to do our largest batch that we've ever done of the RTD canned thing. And we're still tinkering with the recipes. There's certain, I'm not 100% on the ratios yet. I think we're close, but I don't think it's exactly where I want it to land. And then we're working on third flavor as well. But the RTDs really came out of repeated requests, a brand asking us for this, and then sort of going, trying it. It was an experiment that went well. So now that's going to be a part of the everyday lineup.
Do you see some
I'm
irony?
excited. I got a can of El Guapo cucumber lavender here that I'm gonna just kind of
Crack into
crack
it,
open there, get that nice fully. And this seems like it'll be good for me this morning. I went to a Woodford Reserve event last night at Clemente Bar and drank a lot of bourbon. So thank you to Woodford Reserve for the free bourbon and the delightful cocktails and the wonderful atmosphere and the moderate hangover that I'm working on this morning. So this seems like this will be just what the doctor ordered.
Nice.
Oh, nice. We love Clemente Bar. Their team is amazing.
Yeah,
They're so good over there. And this is really nice. This has got a it's like a, I don't know. I don't really like any of that La Croix, like lightly flavored fizzy water stuff. It does make me think of what Natalie calls what does she call like sparkling water again? What's her
Pain
phrase
water.
for it? Pain water. Yes, exactly.
It tastes like aspartame. So like our whole thing was just like no fake flavors, no chemicals, or like it's like the whatever comes from flavoring houses is like not, I don't like the way that tastes either. So that's truly just our bitters recipes and water with carbonation. There's no other ingredient. So no calories, no added sugar. It's just pretty simple.
And it seems like, I mean, to me, the idea of an RTD bitters and soda is a no-brainer. It seems like the sort of thing like, yes, of course, when I heard about, this new adventure that you were embarking on at El Guapo, I was like, of course, yes, obviously the world needs an RTD bitters and soda. But I think that is because that's something that we sort of, as bar professionals, are aware of and know to make if we want something that's got, like you said, that flavor, but like not a lot of calories, not a lot of booze. In your case, no booze whatsoever. But I'm really happy for you that it's been so wildly embraced by the public. But I guess I'm kind of curious, like, how do you shelve this? Like, how do you pitch it to the potential consumer, someone who might not be aware of what bitters and soda even is? It sounds like it's been successful. So I'm just really curious kind of what that journey has been like for y'all.
Well, so this is new. So we started doing this. I think we did our first batch 3 months ago. So I mean, it started at the very beginning of the year, and so we're now this like project is kind of backwards because like I said, we'd never had the intention of doing this and like putting it on store shelves. But now that we know that's the direction this is taking, we're designing the 4-pack boxes and, doing all the stuff we would have done on the front end usually. But when we're talking about it with respect to customers and how do you sell it on a retail shelf, we're sort of going through all those exercises now of like, what do we put on the box and how do we want to talk about this? Because I do think the bar community understands what this is. And I have a lot of friends that have gone through, having children that their drink of choice is a bitters and soda because they don't want the alcohol, but they all laugh and they're like, I'm not going to, have a bottle of bitters in my purse and carry it around so I can like make my own bitters and soda. Like the Mardi Gras parade. So this is just an easier option, but we are trying to think through like, how do you communicate this to customers who don't necessarily understand what this is, or they aren't used to ordering a bitters and soda at the bar because it's different.
Right. And I totally get that. Although you might have seen my face. Like I would carry around a bottle of bitters. I would carry around
Sother
one
has a
bottle of
bottle of
bitters.
bitters in his purse all the time.
I would carry around one bottle of bitters more than I would carry around a 6-pack of cans.
Fair.
Just go get the soda. And there was that thing that came out some time ago that you would squirt into your water. Remember that thing? Like it seems like that to me.
Mio? Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you should make like a Neo packet for your bitters and see what happens there. I don't know. I'm not trying to open up another supply chain for you. Another shelf product. I do find it a little bit curious and maybe even ironic if you wind up working with CBD or THC companies, like that you went from the non-alc space to a space of some other form of inebriation. But that's neither here nor there in this conversation. I just thought it was funny. You live down there in New Orleans. I used to live there. Everybody knows that. I talk about it all the time. Marie Laveau, the famed voodoo queen of New Orleans, cursed the city's residents by saying that if you live in New Orleans and you leave New Orleans, you will think of New Orleans every day of your life. And it comes up in conversation for me nearly every single day, right? Being in the business that I'm in.
Does that mean you're coming back?
I don't think I'll ever live there again because the town nearly killed me. Greg knows that I famously say I lived in New Orleans for 3 years, so they tell me. Yeah, I loved it, but boy, oh boy, it was out to get me. But I do visit back every year, of course, for Tales of the Cocktail, and I also visit back on other occasions just to go. But living there, you certainly see with a much more clear eye and a much more sense of presence that the weather is out to get us, right?
Yeah.
And so you're doing everything you can do to be on the right side of that. Talk a little bit about what you're doing to make sure that El Guapo is conscientious about those things.
Yeah. So with the brand, with sustainability and recyclability, it's always been, a conundrum to me. Half the time, I don't even think we are recycling. They say we are, but then they pick it up and put it in the same truck as the trash truck. Like it doesn't make any sense. And when you're talking to people on the West Coast, they're like, how could that be? There's just all sorts of things that come up and people don't understand how far behind we are with sustainability and basics like recycling in the South. So thinking through that, I wanted to make sure that we were using highly recyclable materials. So we only bottle in glass. That's really important to me. All of the labels are 100% recycled craft paper. So those are easily, put back into the environment. And we use black ink because it's the best for environmental reasons. So we just try to be as sustainable as possible on those fronts. And then everything is hand dipped in wax to avoid putting single-use tear tape for all of the seals in the trash can, because that just seems like such a waste to me. We make so many bottles. That's so much plastic. I would rather take the extra time and the couple of extra pennies per bottle to wax those, because it's just a natural way to seal a bottle, and it's so much better for the planet. And then
it just looks nicer too. It's just a handsome bottle when you get it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So that's really the reason behind it, is it's an environmental thing. And then on the packaging side, we try to do everything with as few we try to be as plastic free as possible. Not everything is. I still haven't found a way to replace a dasher. So there's some things that we're always researching, but we just haven't been able to figure out yet. But as plastic free as possible is sort of my mantra. So we pay a lot of attention to the packaging materials too when we're shipping, so that those can be as sustainable as possible. And then a couple years ago, there was a Tulane student that had graduated with a chemical engineering degree, and she too was very frustrated about the lack of recyclability here in Louisiana. She's from Acadiana, and really wanted to tackle this problem. So she did a GoFundMe and bought a single bottle crushing machine for like one wine bottle at a time. And she advertised it to all of her friends at Tulane. And within a month, her whole backyard was glass, and she was trying to recycle glass back into sand and use it to make sandbags, really, to like protect people's homes from hurricanes as they were coming in. And that really set off a light bulb moment. And she applied for a couple of different incubator programs here in New Orleans. And she had requested, she asked a couple of people if they knew me and if they could introduce me. So from the very beginning of a company called Glass Half Full, I have been mentoring Fran, the founder. And Fran's incredible. She's, in her mid-20s. She's raised over $6.5 million. And from that, single glass crushing machine, she's diverted 6 million pounds of glass from our landfills into glass sand. And that sand is now used to restore our coastlines and still do, projects to help people protect their homes when storms are coming. But she won a $5 million grant from the National Science Foundation to prove the efficacy of her research. And she is absolutely incredible. I'm so proud of her. But I'm still very involved in Glass Half Full and trying to figure out ways to restore ecosystems and our coastlines. And that is expanding around the Gulf South. She's starting to collect glass in other cities, and we're really trying to expand on, where we are doing projects throughout the Gulf of America, that's what we're calling it these days. But so Glass Half Full is really cool.
We're mocking that.
Yeah,
we're not calling it that. We're mocking
Glass
that.
Half Full is cool. It's a cool business, and it's a lot of fun to work on that.
Yeah, that's incredible. Wow, Greg, we should see about getting that person on. I would love to talk about
seriously.
Again, sort of doing good while being bad, turning in your glass alcohol vessels and having them turned into sand for sandbagging and restoring the coastline. That's incredible. And it's good on you for being involved in that. And also all the other initiatives that you're taking with your company, like even all the way down to like you said, I was shocked to hear that. I don't know, Greg and I are both colorblind, but I didn't even think that black ink was less impactful than whatever red ink.
It's something about the way that the dyes and different ingredients that are used to make the dyes, it's like more environmentally friendly.
It makes sense. It's just something I would have simply never thought of.
Need to go back to using those bugs for a red ink, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, the cochineal beetle. Well, we've looped around it a little bit. Let's target in on it a little bit more specifically. Also, I want to know, El Guapo, where did the name come from? But beyond that, like, why? Beyond the business aspect of it, where you said, NA is easier to shop around to other states because every state has its own rule about how alcohol is consumed and sold. And we talk about this ad nauseum on the show, and it drives us all crazy. But other than that, what made you decide, I want to make all these products NA? I guess what I'm asking is, like, what made you say to yourself, this is already going to be a hard road. Why don't I make it more difficult?
For the alcohol free?
Yeah.
Well, so we were alcohol free before it was cool to be, but honestly, it was
That's
easier.
What I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I knew enough to be dangerous about distribution and how it all worked because I was the gopher girl for the distillery and I did all the research. So I kind of knew how it worked from when I was, 20. So the idea was that if I started and did all alcohol free, I could ship across state lines. I could grow it myself. I could do whatever I wanted, and it would be easier for me to grow faster without having to find a distributor, convince a distributor, grow through a distributor, give them an additional 30% because there's an extra tier, all of that stuff. So it kind of started from that. And then ironically, as we've grown, now we did close 11 new states for distribution last year because you do get to the point of where you have so many customers that it's more economical for those people to order through a distributor. So, one of my big ones from last year is Skurnik. They represent us in 8 states.
Mm-hmm.
And it is easier for the Plaza Hotels and Bimmelmans of the world to get their products on their liquor order through their Skurnik rep every single week, as opposed to, yes, I will ship you another case and that's going to be there in about 6 days,
Right.
So it all comes full circle. And now we're back and, we probably have 50% of the population. It's not 50% of the states covered, but it's 50% of the population with distribution. And we're always talking to additional people. So we're working on a couple of different additional distribution relationships for 2025. But, it's interesting how I started to avoid that, and now I'm right back in it. But it actually really helps me because now that I've achieved scale, it just helps me continue growing faster and sign up more accounts because it's easier for those accounts to order through a distributor. But it's also not that much work for me to convince a distributor to work with us because we have so many of these flagship accounts that really love us and love what we do.
Mhm.
So we're sort of a value add for the distributors that want to work with us. So that's been a fun and rewarding thing that's happened over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Are there any distributors that are, like I live here in New York, so let's talk about New York. I know that there's, of course, even more rules and regulations about alcohol, but then some of those rules overlap with the non-alcohol, right? Like, for instance, in the state of New York, I can't go to a liquor store and buy
Correct.
bitters because they're not liquor. Liquor stores can only sell
Yeah.
liquor. Is
Exactly.
that true of distributors as well?
No, so there are 50 different playbooks, and they change with every state's legislation session. So
Mhm.
you have to, you have to keep up with a lot. And I always tell my team, if you don't know, ask me, because I've been doing this for long enough that I have a pretty good historical knowledge of what's happening in every place. And then always just reminding my team of what they can and can't do. New York is one of the
Mhm.
most peculiar when it comes to the specific rules about where you can and can't sell. But
Right.
what happens in New York is that basically, I mean, Skurnik is ours for 8 states. For 7 states, they do on and off premise. There's no rules
Okay.
or regulations.
Okay.
But for us in New York, for retail accounts, we do a lot with Big Night. We love them. The Meadow is an amazing account, and we just love their team. Mark Bitterman has been a great
Mhm.
friend and a good supporter of the brand over the years. We still drop ship by the case to those accounts because there's just really no way around it. And we
Mhm.
would love for that law to change, but until it does, and until we figure out how to pay lobbyists to get that fixed, it just is what it is. So we still drop ship to retailers, but in New York City specifically, or New York State, all of the bars and restaurants are serviced by Skurnik, and we have to do the rest.
Yeah. I mean, at least I don't envy. We talk about this so much. I don't envy anybody in this in our business. The rules and the red tape that are, as you just said, not only are they different for every state, they change every legislative
Yeah.
session.
Mhm.
It's ludicrous. It makes none. I'm going to say it. Greg, I think the federal government made a mistake.
What?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
that'd
don't
be a
think that.
first.
I don't think. You're hearing it. You're hearing it here. It's breaking news.
Breaking
Yeah.
news here on the Speakeasy.
I don't think that they thought it through when they said that every state, nay, every county, could
Yeah.
make rules and regulations on how alcohol is consumed and sold.
Well, that is kind of I don't know that it's this is just one of my like kind of favorite little historical things about just our weird relationship with booze in this country. But part of me kind of respects the like, you know what, this whole prohibition thing has gone wrong. Like, we just need to repeal it. But it is funny that like almost 100 years ago, we're still dealing with the fact that they were like, you know what, this is just done, and you all can sort out for yourselves what that means.
Right. Yeah, not the smartest
One nation,
approach.
50 tiny little countries that don't really agree on a lot.
Greg,
Yeah.
how are you enjoying your soda? You cracked open the which one? Cucumber one? Cucumber
I had the
lavender?
cucumber lavender. Yeah, no, and I mean, we've talked a lot about this because, RTDs are really big and NA is really, really big. And some of my favorite people working in this space are the ones that kind of acknowledge what you said earlier, Christa, which is that, there are times where we all don't want to drink, but your options at that point are kind of like water, juice, or soda, which is just, a ton of sugar and or aspartame. And there needs to be an alternative where you can, still feel like, yes, I am an adult and I'm having a beverage for grownups, but that doesn't have any alcohol in it. And this one has like a nice level of bitterness. It's lightly flavored. It's refreshing. I'm sold. I'm a fan.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm holding in my hand. You sent us just for the listener, you sent us a box of stuff. I got a couple of sodas, I got a couple of bitters, and I got a couple of syrups here. But the one that I've got in my hand right now, sweet potato syrup. You want to talk about that one a little bit? You said off air that it was your
Yeah.
favorite. Tell me why, and tell me what's going on in here.
It is one of my favorites. So that one actually started because vegetables are rated before they're sold. So if they're just not like pretty enough or whatever, and they're not rated high enough to go on grocery store shelves, they go to the landfill. And there was a farmer that had a bunch that were about to just get trashed. And so we took those and turned those into the first batch of sweet potato syrup. So that's how it started. And then it just sort of grew from there. Now we do buy sweet potatoes. Like as the production gets bigger and bigger, I don't think it would be possible for us to go to all the farmers and be like, give us all your ugly sweet potatoes, and still make the amount that you need to make. But that too, was rooted in sustainability. How can we make something out of something that's going in the trash? And I do think it's delicious. I think it's great in an old fashioned. It makes a really good milk punch. If you're into New Orleans style cocktails, that's a great one. But we use it for all sorts of different things. I've put it in Mai Tais. I've done a million different things with that syrup. I think it's versatile. I think it's delicious. And it's just a different product. I don't know of anyone else that makes that, but it's really good. And I like
Well,
it.
yeah, and I imagine it was no one else makes it because it's not easy. Like I've tried to mess around, granted not on an industrial scale, but like I've tried to mess around with sweet potato syrup in the past, and it's hard to get past that kind of the getting the starchy mouthfeel out
The
of it
goop,
is a
yeah.
big hurdle. I want to
It-
ask about that, but I also want to ask, how ugly does a sweet potato need to be
Yeah,
to be
exactly.
rejected?
They're already pretty unattractive, right?
Yeah, they're already kind of like lumpy and weird looking. Like, is there a what is the line for an ugly sweet potato?
I don't know the official definition. I don't make the rules, but I think it's partially, how size and are they broken? Are there, what's the quality of it? And for us, I don't care if they're ugly. I don't care if they're broken because we're going to wash them, chop them, and put them in a pot, So it's a different, it doesn't matter if they're beautiful or not beautiful by the Department of Agriculture standards. We don't care. So I don't know how they make that decision, but whatever the discards are is what made its way to us. And then from there, now we purchase because we have to, but that's how it started.
All sweet potatoes are beautiful in your eyes. That's wonderful.
That's right.
But yeah, how do you get around that kind of, I mean, without giving away, the family
Yeah.
secrets, like how do you get around that kind of starchiness? Because that seems like that would be a big hurdle to clear for making this something that people would love and use regularly.
So some of it is done, and we have more sophisticated filtration equipment. So some of it is handled in that. I will say it's definitely not the team's favorite thing to make. It makes a mess, and it is it's something. But the equipment does make a big difference, and that's one of the things that we tell a lot of our partners, like with the orgeats, with the sweet potato syrup. They're like, we have tried to figure this out, and we can't figure it out. And it's like, well, if we didn't spend all this money on equipment, we wouldn't be able to do it either. Sometimes it really is going back and forth with the food scientist and with the engineers like Seth, and saying, this is what we're trying to do. We like this, but we don't like this. Can you help us figure out how to solve this specific problem? And the equipment is what allows us to get around some of these things. But the filtration is something that's a big deal in the sweet potato syrup, because you're right, the starch, and then even like that goopy sugar thing that comes out of the sweet potato is also an issue. And we've been able to figure out how to do that with modifications in equipment.
Well, I'm excited to try. I wouldn't even thought of doing it in a milk punch, but that sounds delightful. So I'm going to try that later on.
It's great.
Yeah, we'll have to tinker around with these things. I think the company's been around for, did you say 2007 is when you started El Guapo?
The distillery was 2007, and then we started making
that's a long time ago.
product in 2009. So I started in July of 2017.
17. Okay, 17. Gotcha. And you've come a long way. Like, I can recall years ago being down at Tales of the Cocktail and seeing El Guapo in the little books and bitters room that they used to do. I think they still do.
We're still there. Yeah.
So it's, you've always been representing your city, of course, and standing up at Tales of the Cocktail and stuff like that. And now you're just out there, you're everywhere. And the success seems to be sort of streaming your way. And with the new RTDs, I'm sure you're going to explode, because that category is just seemingly unstoppable. What else? What's on the horizon for El Guapo?
We just hired 2 new people, which is really exciting. I think we're currently in a process. I'm trying to get my operations and our internal stuff together. I think it's sort of like the pendulum goes both ways, but it's either you're trying to fix manufacturing and get that part together. And then when you get that part together and you can grow some more, then you have to grow the team to keep up with it. And it's constantly going back and forth. So it's a lot of that. And also with the new distributors that we've signed on, it's a ton of work to just get your customers that love you and love working with your team to trust in a distributor and switch orders. So I've spent a lot of time in the last 3 months in New York, because it is a lot of visiting accounts and, connecting the dots and getting these buyers to switch to the distributor. So there's a lot of time and effort that goes into that, and then still maintaining those relationships because they are really important to me. So we're sort of, working on building up our distributors and getting customers to switch buying patterns to go with the people that we're now working with, and then building the team internally because we do have some bigger opportunities with events and brands that we've been negotiating and working on. So that requires more manpower. So we're continuing to grow the team here in New Orleans, and I'm committed to keeping the brand here and making a difference in New Orleans. New Orleans needs quality jobs. We need more companies here. People don't realize how small New Orleans is. Our population is still smaller than it was the day Katrina hit, and the 20th anniversary is this August.
Wow.
So, being a company that's here and, really committed to making a difference here is something that I want to see through. It's important to me.
Yeah, that's admirable. And that's a statistic I didn't know about New Orleans being still smaller than it was pre or day of Katrina, as you said.
Yeah.
That's shocking. Takes a long time to recover from something as big as that. And then with the, additional things that get in the way, as you said, the recession kind of happened in there as well. And then Ida came along, and, you keep getting kneecapped in that town.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're all big New Orleans stands here, so keep up the good work. Here's hoping that meteor doesn't strike New Orleans or something just as you're like ramping up for this next thing. But
well, speaking of next things, I can see where you're going, Greg, but I want to jump in with one more. Speaking of next things, you just mentioned that you're here in New York a bit. Are you going to be here for BCB?
I am. It's going to be my first bar convent. I'm so excited.
Excellent.
I know. I used to do this other trade show in Atlanta, and the dates always overlapped, and it just never worked, and it didn't really make sense for me to back out of the thing in Atlanta. But then some things changed there with how they do things, and so I'm coming to bar convent, and I'm really excited about it. And I'll actually be there. I guess I'm coming 3 more times before bar convent, which is crazy because it's right around the corner. But yeah, a lot of time in New York.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing you before then, but also definitely at Bar Convent. I'll definitely be there doing some stuff, I'm sure.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Where can our listeners follow along with your shenanigans or find more information about how to get a hold of your delicious products?
Yeah, so we're at El Guapo Bitters on Instagram and TikTok, if it's still a thing when the government decides. And elguapobitters.com is an amazing resource. We have a lot of recipes on there as well as all the products too. And then for my personal entrepreneurial journey, I am at hurricane_Christa on Instagram. And yeah, that's where to find us.
Awesome. On your website, a consumer, can they order direct?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything
Excellent.
is on there. We have all the products on the website. We do a couple things that are like bartenders' favorites, like the chicory pecan is the top bitter SKU. You can always find that on Amazon if you're in a pinch. But all of the products are available on the website.
Yeah, cool.
Well, get yourself if you want something that is light and refreshing and doesn't taste like aspartame and is really just a nice silver bullet for a bourbon-induced hangover, I would say El Guapo Cucumber Lavender RTD Soda, Bitters and Soda. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for making me feel better. It's been lovely to have you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, that is going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy, but be sure to tune into HRN for plenty more great programs just like this one. And if you want more from this great program, just like this one, you can become a regular on our Patreon page. We're going to get recipes from all of our guests. You are going to get bonus episodes. You are going to get a free cocktail kit every single month from our friends at Shaker and Spoon. So if you want more, that is a great place to go and check us out. And be sure to tune in next week when we've got something of a first. We have a father-son team that is starting I believe it is a equity firm where people can invest in barrels. It is a barrel investment firm. I'm pretty sure I'm not using those words correctly. They'll come on and school me, but should be interesting. I'm curious to hear how they're getting in on this side of the business. But for now, that is going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. Until next time, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
So you don't shun the devil with your
The Speakeasy is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food and drink radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.